Hello! Welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about the new Harlan Coben book. I'm going to try and keep this review basically spoiler free because I think this book has only been out for actually like a couple of weeks, so it's still pretty new, and I'd imagine a lot of people don't want the ending of a mystery, but that's okay because I probably will want to talk more about the characters anyway, so this works out fine. I'll just focus on the characters and writing style. I am going to give just a brief sort of overview and then I'll go right into the review. Let's start with that overview. Win is about a character named Win, and he is a really wealthy guy. I don't really know the details, but I believe he's about middle-aged. Not important at all. But Win stands for Windsor Lockwood, I think? Windsor Lockwood III. As I said, he's a really wealthy character, and he's initially, when you start reading, he's got sort of like a Batman vibe. He seems to be somebody who is out for vigilante justice. He trains, he knows like every type of martial arts. He's a real character, and he has this whole family mystery that unfolds throughout the course of the book, where they had some really expensive and valuable paintings stolen, and one of them like turns up, and he basically goes down this huge rabbit hole of an entire mystery he uncovers involving his family. And it also relates back to the antics of the Jane Street 5, the Jane Street 6, which were a group of people who back in the 70s were involved in some terrorist activity. And then it also involves his cousin, who was kidnapped a long time ago when she was a teenager and tortured. So these all are part of like a bigger mystery that he delves into, and you find all of these components out pretty early on, but as the story progresses you discover more and more, and there are tons of twists and turns. Honestly, so many twists and turns that at one point I was like, is this headed in a direction that I really don't like? But ultimately I became more intrigued again as the mystery unfolded even further. There's definitely a point though, about maybe 2/3 of the way through, like right before you kind of reach a lot of that climactic stuff, where I was just like, where is this going? What is happening? As I said, I'm not going to be giving any spoilers, but I just want to give an overview about this. It's a pretty wide mystery, lots of intrigue, twists and turns, and it's all just anchored by this character of Win. So let's just go right into some of the review components. I believe this is actually the first book in what is soon to be, or what is going to be, a series involving this character Win, Windsor, and I'd be interested to see where the rest of the books go, because in this book he's definitely a little bit abrasive. I believe this is intentional. I think that there's going to be a series and there's going to be some growth that happens with this character throughout the series. As it stands right now, he really starts the book as just unapologetically sort of a jerk. He even talks about just relishing in violence. He loves violence, which is not the greatest thing to hear, but he's definitely got sort of anti-hero vibes. He has his weird own code of ethics, but he is just unapologetically, absolutely a jerk. I don't dislike it. Some of the time I find this to be honestly really funny, really humorous, and he's not a jerk without any other endearing qualities. I'll say that. And I haven't read a ton of Harlan Coben, so I'm actually not familiar with the Myron Boletaire series, but after reading this, I think I may read some of those books because I thought it was pretty interesting, and I like how even though Win seems to have so much disdain and he's very ambivalent to all of the people, he seems to not have a huge opinion one way or another of the people around him, except for Myron, which is kind of an endearing quality. You know that he's not completely cut off from people. There are some people he cares about, and his cousin is one of them. And then he also talks about his biological daughter, Ema. His relationship with his biological daughter, Ema, seems to me to be something that is going to be explored a lot further in subsequent books, because they kind of touch on it, but they don't delve into it super deeply. It's just that he never thought he wanted kids. He's not like the settling down type, but he sees a lot of himself in Ema and her affinity for kind of crime solving, solving puzzles, putting things together. And so I found that really endearing, honestly. It just kind of warms the character up a little bit. I think we're gonna see a lot of that over the rest of this series if he continues it. And I think that that's gonna be an interesting character arc to see this kind of, I don't wanna say cold-hearted, but like, let's be real. It's gonna be interesting to see this cold-hearted character have his heart warmed that much more by his biological daughter. I'm interested to see where that goes, and I think even within the book we saw a little bit of growth from that, but he is a very blunt character, which makes him sometimes unlikable, but also sometimes really funny. So I enjoyed him more than the character in Runaway. I forget that character's name, but the protagonist in the book Runaway just felt to me like a little bit too perfect, and I don't want my protagonist or really any of my characters to be just one shade where they're absolutely perfect and there's no flaws and it's everyone else's fault, everyone else is the problem. I talked about that in a review and I'll link it here, but in the book Runaway, it really felt the women were always the problem in that book, and it just didn't sit quite right with me. That being said, I did like the mystery in that book. It was pretty interesting. I will say that this book, of course, the protagonist is more of an anti-hero, which just makes it baseline more interesting. But I also feel like the mystery itself it just goes right up until the end, unfolding and unfolding and unfolding, which I thought was really interesting. And it does make sure, I mean, he makes sure to tie up every loose end in the story. So you are left knowing whether or not you like what you know. You're left knowing what you need to know and what you yearn to know. So I did like that. But definitely I could see this character being very divisive. He's abrasive, he's a little bit harsh, rough around the edges, and just unapologetically privileged, and he makes that well known. Which brings me to my next point that I kind of want to touch on, which is that he does touch on a lot of class privilege issues. He touches on them, and he touches on them from the perspective of Win, but Win just readily admits, he says, I can buy my way out of these problems. I have more influence because of the money I have. He talks about this very openly, and I did think that it was interesting that he just blatantly discusses this. I will say I felt like it was an opportunity to maybe delve a little bit deeper into that. So I am hoping that in the rest of this series, Coben definitely decides to delve into that a little bit more. I don't know how deep he wants to go into various social issues, but I think that this would be an interesting perspective and it would really work well to explore it more. I remember in Runaway, he also kind of touches on this, so I would love it if he would stop just skimming the surface and maybe delve a little bit more deeply into that. That's something I would love to see, especially from kind of a mystery thriller author, because I think it's a unique perspective and it could really bring a lot of people in and get people thinking about what it means to have that type of privilege, what class privilege means. So I like that he brought it up, but I wish he went deeper into it. And I remember thinking the same thing about Runaway, so hopefully, because this is a series, he'll go a little bit more deep into that kind of, just a little bit more. It doesn't have to be the main focus, but just to get, you know, beyond the surface layer mention would be amazing. One thing that I did notice right away is that the story pulls you in really, really quickly, which I did appreciate. You're immediately like, who is this guy? What's his deal? Why does he know so much martial arts? There's a lot that kind of pulls you in right away, and I think that the mystery itself had a lot of interesting components. There's kind of like an art heist component, there's kidnapping, there's a lot of different elements that it hits. So I think that a lot of people would be interested in this. I could see the story and the mystery itself appealing to a super wide audience. As I said, the protagonist or anti-hero is probably going to be divisive, but I'd imagine a lot of people could get over that just because the story hits so many interesting points. I guess my point is I'm really interested to see where the series goes. I believe it's a divisive character, but if this mystery is anything to judge by, they're gonna be really interesting thriller mystery novels that unfold in kind of unique ways. But I think that the protagonist is going to probably turn some people off of this series. So, you know, it might not be for everybody, but if you can get past that, you'll probably enjoy it. And that is that. I don't really have a lot more thoughts on it. I literally just finished it like 5 minutes ago, so maybe I'll let it sit with myself a little bit more. If you've read this, let me know below if you like the character Win or if you don't like the character Win. I would be interested to know because I could see a lot of people not liking him. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this review. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Okay, not done yet.